With the centre-right popular Tory safety valve operations, such as Reform UK, Advance UK, and now with Restore Britain, all split faction of them due to egos, greed, and messiah complexes. I feel like this is the same in nationalist spaces, such as the PA and Herman split, to then remigration now led by Steve Laws, who is now backing Rupert Lowell of all people in an attempt for clout and ego battles with people online. I feel in this country that nationalists have lost their way. Zoomer nationalists are too undisciplined and childish and weak. Not even that, but also they don't really understand what nationalism is outside of fancy edits and supplementaries like Europa the Last Battle or Zoomer historian videos. Is there a way for nationalism to be fixed, or was it doomed in the first place? The truth about nationalism is it's not just an ideology, but also a mentality, which I will get into later. It's important to understand its history and why something like the BNP, though with its issues, had better tactics and was based on middle-class working man, rather than some rich Tory who only cares about his possessions. Too much bad jacketing and financial issues that, under Nick Griffin, ruined something genuine and caused it to fail. So why are nationalists in this mess to begin with? We will cover the brief history of nationalism in the UK and it meant back then, and how this mentality was ruined with tea-squabbling, bad actors and grifting. Nationalism roots trace back to the ancient Britons who inhabited the island of Great Britain, forming a unifying identity that evolved through centuries of invasion and unifications. By the 16th century, the 1542 Crown of Ireland Act merged England and Irish crowns, expanding British identity beyond England to include Ireland, fostering a sense of imperial unity among Anglo-Irish elites. The 18th century saw a surge in popular patriotic nationalism, actively promoted by the government during conflicts with France and Spain, emphasising Britain's naval power, insular independence and Protestant values. The 19th century marks the peak. The Industrial Revolution created a unified national economy and public sphere, shifting loyalties from local provinces to the state. Queen Victoria's reign, 1837 to 1901, epitomised this, with the British Empire expanding across Africa and Asia, driven by naval dominance. Benjamin Disraeli's 1877 conferral of Empress of India on Victorian symbolism imperial nationalism, blending pride in governance and cultural superiority. Figures like Rudyard Kipling celebrate this one nation Toryism, promoting interclass harmony and historical stability amid revolutionary fears. The 20th century began with the cracks. World War I and World War II reinforced nationalism through victory over fascism, but post-1945, decolonisation eroded empire-based identity. Enoch Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech highlighted tension, warning of immigration's impact and resonating with 70 to 80% of the public favouring controls. The 1970s and 80s saw fringe groups like the National Front and the BNP gain 5 to 15% in locals amid economic decline and riots. Though I also think Powell was not truly a nationalist, since Tories are not inclined in that thinking, but his speech stays sound. Thatcher's 1982 Falklands victory boosted pride, but her free market policies dismantling working class communities, weakening grassroots nationalism 1990s under Blair, shifted to multiculturalism, suppressing traditional British identity. The BNP peaked at 1 million votes in 2009 European elections. Brexit in 2016 was the last major peak. 52% voted Leave for sovereignty and immigration control, propelled by UKIP and Farage. But post-Brexit disillusionment set in, shortages, delays and unfulfilled promises revealed nationalism fragility, leading to today's decline. Internal divisions are unstabilising UK nationalism. The movement has always been fragmented, from UKIP's post-Brexit collapse to reform UK's Farage-centric structure facing ego clashes, like Rupert Lowell's defection from Reform to launch Restore Britain in February 2026. Smaller splinter groups like Ben Habib's Advance UK diluted the vote, the Gorton and Denton by-election. Advance got humiliated with 154 votes, beaten by Monster Raven Looney parties by 159 votes. The sin fighting turns potential allies into enemies, wasting energy on purity tests instead of unity. Nationalism got bogged down in far-right labels, with media and courts smearing critics of migration as extremists. Civic nationalists in these spaces in the UK usually end up self-censoring to avoid racism. Accusations like Tommy Robinson is best friends with an illegal Sikh who came off the back of a lorry to not come off as racist, as well as other DEI or diversity hires. Then started retreating to online echo chambers like X and started to gatekeep their audience rather than real-world organising. Sure, Tommy can get organised, but he does it in a way to steal money off of his clueless audience. I think someone who was new in these stat spaces, like Young Bomb, talked about one time about how the Tommy Tar are huge ass lickers and non-stop worshiping him, which I thought was funny, when in a cult with Simon Tomlin. Externally, economical betrayal eroded trust. Nationalism promised jobs and sovereignty, but post-Brexit migration hit records under Tories. Wages stagnated and housing costs soared due to globalist policies. Voters feel lied to. Labour's 2024 landslide was anti-Tory exhaustion, not anti-nationalism. EU ties with corporate lobbying for cheap labour makes nationalist policies harder to implement. The establishment's work narrative paints nationalism as backward, while demographic shifts in brown areas like Gorton favouring the Greens over traditional nationalists. So after all the drama in 2024 summer to do with the Homeland Party, as well as other dramas that happened in the past in to do with nationalist circles, why am I still a nationalist? Why have I not given up? Well, like I said earlier, it's a mentality, and it's, well, in its name of course. Nationalism, or in this case we could call it ethno-nationalism, where their nationality is determined by blood and not a passport or a paper or certificate. It's based on the genes of Frisi, Dani, Angles, Celts and Anglo-Saxons. I've covered these groups in previous videos like my DNA test or the Cheddarman debunking video where anti-racists make claims in order to say we should let everyone in because we were brown years ago or some nonsense. Usually Tory boys like Lowell, Nigel, Habib use said sound bites like Britain for the British, yet cannot define it or backtrack for optics, when in reality they only care about money. Again, you have probably heard this from me before. With Restore Britain, people are treating it as yet another last chance to save Britain, in quote. When I hear this, I laugh so hard at the Goy cattle. Like 1 minute it's Nigel, then Habib, now Low? Like, how can you not see it for what it is? It's actual theatre as they squabble over nothing that's actually going to save them, or so to speak. People will try to correct me and say, oh, but Lowell is not like that. He will pretend to be centre-right when he is really a nationalist. So let me get this straight. A Tory boy joins Reform because it's for Tories, then gets kicked out, not only for that reason, but also because of how Habib and also Low wanted Nigel's share of Reform, then creates his own party with undeveloped policies. Sure, I could join and rebuild, but is it really truly nationalism or another Tory op? In truth, I don't know if he will drop his Tory act and become a nationalist tomorrow, but I guarantee when he will disappoint or start to Zaya the fuck out, then it will be a jump to yet another party backed by someone like Zaya bot Elon Musk, who will no doubt support it in order to control policies and lobby for his companies. American lobbying at its finest. Why should I leave Homeland and join yet another party like all the other idiot Zoomers did? Because it's about opportunism rather than loyalty. I know the fan with Homeland Party because of Kenny Smith and Steve Law's ego battles, but is Rupert going to be any better leader? From what I have seen, he lacks the actual experience needed in politics and also relies on soundbiteism than actual policy like his emotional-driven party launch on Twitter. And this is where I come to the cream of crop of this video where this all went wrong. The nationalist mentality fell. People who claim they're nationalists will try and justify flirtation with the centre-right, with their populism and make it all about themselves because of fear of missing out, and the big applause the people would get when it's in reality is just a fantasy. The right tend to romanticize the past like Napoleon, Hitler, Jesus, etc., without realizing it would be a horrible time to live in war and conflict. Most humans I know and have seen are weak twinks, too chronically aligned to actually fight or identify as gay and trans. How do Western governments expect to fight wars with Gen Z weaklings? Let alone when the education system has let them down or even made them gay or stupid. I guess what I am trying to say is that we don't need to laugh at some past historical character, now copy their policies, stick to genuine politics instead of false prophets and messiah complexes, or start backing centre-right Tories LARPing as nationalists. LARPing knapsocks, cokehead civnats, Christ-cut fundamentalists, grifters who are toxic and nasty, who run away from the enemy or hide behind bodyguards. Christian fundamentalists who only care about the Christian aspect, but why never the natives? They are dangerously subversive like the evangelicals. And to do with someone like with Curler as well, because in my opinion, I think he's a coward. Now, obviously, I actually have covered with PA and as well to do with how he was basically slagging us off online, especially to do with the Homeland, and basically said, oh, it went and failed. When in reality, a lot of the times Curler is propped up by Russians and Americans. And the problem is when you rely on a foreign audience of all things, because how are you going to establish national sovereignty whilst you've got all of these people giving you super chats? And I think that when it comes down to the type of grifters, and especially to do with Curler, I feel like you don't have to grift. You don't have to, like I said before, laugh or just try and get money off people. Now with Tommy Robinson, it's a little bit different because obviously to do with Tommy, he basically starts do these rallies, and as well to do with the Peter Lynch scam, where basically he then tried to raise money for, I think, what was it, £70,000 or something. And basically, when they got the money, he didn't actually give the money to the family. He actually just took it for himself. So obviously, being very greedy. But when it comes down to Curler, as I've covered, where basically he's as I said, relying on super chats, and he's not that unwealthy. Like I think his dad's quite wealthy or something, so he could just get money off his dad. But I think that when you are just sort of leading nationalists along, like American or Russian audiences, the problem with this is that basically, taking all of these foreigners and letting them prop you up, when in reality, Curler is basically just dragging people on, especially to do with Sam Melia. And the whole Sam Melia case, the thing I find suspicious about it, especially to do with the stickers, not the fact that Sam put them up, but how he basically went and got put in prison for 2 years. And when it comes down to Sam being put away, as I've covered in my video, it's like, how did he get put in prison when basically, who reported them? I'm not sure. Maybe it was someone like from Hope Not Hate, or maybe it could have been someone like Curler. Because obviously, for some reason, a lot of the people who are surrounded by Curler just mysteriously end up in prison. There's rumours that he's actually a GCHQ agent or MI5 or something. And I just think that, obviously, I can't prove that. There's no concrete evidence. I obviously don't want to start rumours, but I just think that the way that Curler behaves, and especially when he attended Sam Melia's trial, because it was a bit vague on that, because I was trying to figure, apparently he attended the full trial, when Sam Melia, he actually said that, he only attended for half of it because of childminding duties, which, okay, fair enough, he went and childminded, but apparently he was the whole child. It was a weird thing to lie about, and then there's other behaviours, especially including that, what's his name, Joel Davis, where basically got some neo-Nazis from, I think, Australia, some Wignats, and basically even Joel Davis has advocated for child marriage, and it's just like, why are you inviting someone like him? And he's like some weirdo. It's like, apparently there's also a rumour that Joel Davis is like Jewish or something. Again, another speculation, but apparently he's in jail, and in fact, National Socialist Network actually got banned in Australia. So I'm just thinking, why is Curler hanging around with these people like the Americans and stuff? And the problem is, you're not appealing to the British audience. And the problem is that when you don't appeal to British people, you kind of just put, not just them off, but basically just relying on too many elements. And I just think when someone like with Sam Melia, like the difference between me and him is that I just feel like you can't really see past Curlet's persona. You can't see past his grift. You can't see past what he's actually like. And because of this, he's sort of like just leading people astray, especially with PA. You know, there's been multiple split-offs, not just with Vermont, but also to do with National Rebirth Party. And again, I don't want to get into that too much because there's a little also a bit backstory, and there's also a little bit more backstory to do with not just with National Action, but also to do with Sam Mealy and his ties to National Action, which apparently they weren't actually planning to do anything because the reason they got banned was apparently one of the members made an MP, which they weren't actually planning to do that. I think there was like this spin in this documentary I think I mentioned called The Walking, and to do with like far-right violence, which, you know, Stephen Graham, you know, the propagandist, but again, like I've covered this. And also someone to do with these spaces like Steve Laws. And the problem with Steve Laws is he isn't very refined, like he isn't very factual in his arguments. He tries to, when he went on that Liam Tufts interview, when I've covered that with my co-creator Fjodor, he basically just came off as kind of like, you know, made the centre-right look moderate, and then all of a sudden, you know, he broke off from Homeland because he said he wanted to be, you know, plant his flags or whatever the fuck metaphor. I don't think Steve Laws is very smart, to be honest. I think he's like very mid-witty type of behaviour. Like, you know, he just wants to use soundbitism and his whole 7-step plan that he wants with immigration. And then he started to back Tory Zionist Rupert Lull, because Rupert Lull actually said that, oh, our government is cowardly, and you know, that, oh, we should support them however we can, which, you know, that's definitely suspicious, especially to do with how that also someone else like Nigel, who basically said that, oh, that Israel has a right to defend itself, which apparently you're not allowed to say that on TV. Apparently it breaches some guidelines, but apparently it was allowed, which, you know, kind of just shows that they're just Zaya bots. And I'm just thinking, like, why is Steve Laws backing someone like Rupert Lull? And in my opinion, I don't think that Lull is even a nationalist, because it's not like the Zoomers can define it for me, let alone him. Because quite frankly, using that emotionally manipulative, I guess, launch trailer to the British people and all these basic speeches, and the problem is that the Zoomers online are just promoting him and essentially just doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It's not like Advance UK, I haven't seen any edits, but obviously, you know, that's more like promotion and propaganda. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, someone like with Steve Laws, you know, he comes off as not creating a very good argument, like especially with Liam Tufts, and basically, you know, he talks about other things like controversial things like race mixing and all these other things. And yeah, I just think, like, even though he's new, he could be a little bit more refined. He could just be a little bit more factual in his arguments, maybe do some research, and maybe, you know, kind of want to get his appearance up. He might want to you know, put some muscle on, mate, because, you know, you look a little bit weak, to be honest. Like, I don't think you'd be able to take on some low IQ, high testosterone Paki or something. Like, I don't think you'd be able to survive that. But yeah, anyway, I won't go too much on Steve Laws, and also probably he should kind of you know, sort his blackheads out as well on his forehead. But anyway, you know, you don't want to come off as like a child nationalist or something. And as well, if you want to click on the link in the description below with links to my other channels and Discord as well.